Hello and welcome to this BSE event, a conversation between Roger Deakins and Dick Pope, just so you know who's who. Both are renowned cinematographers, but did you know they've been friends for 45 years? And I don't think I've ever told you this, Dick, but I was terrified of meeting you because we had just been married a little while, and then I had to meet you, and I knew how important you were to Roger. And I thought it was just worse than meeting the in-laws. And so I thought, because if you didn't like me,
worse than doing an interview.
Well, I thought if you didn't like me, I was out. That was it.
Right.
So
God.
thank you for letting me stay married to Roger.
I never knew that. Well, you're a very cool person anyway, James. I never realized that ever.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, so tonight also our wonderful publishers, Damiani, have generously agreed to give away 2 books of BYWAYS, Roger's book of still photography. And we've drawn 2 names at random from the registrants, and we'll announce it at the end of this conversation. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, Dick. It's all yours.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you. So yesterday you went to Windsor Castle and you knelt down and had a sword placed on your shoulder. Am I right?
I did, yeah. Well,
I think you should tell us that. And congratulations on behalf of everybody within the BSC and all that are participating in this conversation, because that is truly wonderful. In Windsor Castle.
Yes. It was kind of amazing. Yeah. I mean, what can you say? It totally. Yeah. I mean, I knew about it for 18 months or something, right. But there couldn't get to the investiture, as they call it, because of COVID. So.
But who was it who invested you?
It was Prince Charles.
Great.
Yeah, it was great, actually. He was really nice. Yeah.
But I want to tell you that before we were doing this, we were waiting in one of the garter room, the room of the garters or whatever. And Roger's sitting there and turns to me and goes, "Look at these chandeliers. See the one down there? The color temperature is really different than this color temperature. Which one do you think works better with the light coming in from the windows?" And I couldn't believe it.
It was really lovely, soft daylight coming in, because Windsor is beautifully lit, as it would be, you know. And they had these huge chandeliers, but the one in the foreground was a lovely yellow. So against the daylight, it was a really nice blend. But then there was one right in the deep background that was kind of intensely red.
Yeah.
But it was just a different LED, you know, candelabra bulb.
Different bulb.
And it was really bugging me. And it was good, really, because it stopped me being quite so nervous while I'm sitting there waiting. If I go up when I bend my knee in front of Prince Charles, whether I'm going to fall over or the phone's going to come out.
I can't believe, though, that they have different color temperatures and different chandeliers. I mean, somebody should be shocked. How can they have that? Every chandelier should be matched.
I don't think they've had enough cinematographers in the castle, really.
It's funny the things you kind of, you know, distract you in a good way, I suppose, at the moment.
So did you have a chat with Charles?
I did, yes. Yes. Right. You know, he talked, I mean, yes, it was very nice.
Lovely. You shake hands? We
did. We weren't supposed to. And Charlie said, Charles said,
Charlie, I'm not,
he said, I really want to shake your hand. But
lovely.
I think it wasn't supposed to because of COVID, but the rules were quite strict.
And did you have to leave the room retreating backwards into the
give a little bow as you leave?
Oh, you don't walk backwards the whole way.
Not the whole way.
Go
but
a couple steps back.
Withdraw from him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a whole.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Very cool. Yeah.
Very nice.
It was very nice. It was a very nice ceremony, and like James said afterwards, you got a feeling that they were really glad that you were there.
Right.
You know, it was really nice. Yeah.
Was there any sort of music provided?
Actually, yes.
There was a little orchestra in the corner.
A chamber orchestra. Lovely. That sounds really great.
It was, and as we walked out the room, I think it was the cellist at the back just gave a little clap as I walked by, and that was a sort of really touching moment.
A fan.
Well, I don't know. It was just a really nice.
You can bet your life it was really fan.
It was really nice. That was good. Anyway, what are we talking about?
Then you should have sat down for a smashing lunch.
We did.
Well, we went
back in town.
with our friend.
Lovely. Very nice. Well, I mean, That's great. And I really want to talk to you about the book, BYWAYS. And I have a few questions which I'd like to ask you. So without further ado, I'll read my first question. Okay, so as opposed to what you first strive for and then set out to achieve in your work in cinema, in what we all know is a full-on collaborative process, stills photography is only ever about just you and your camera. The decision to raise that camera and record the image rests solely with you. That decisive moment, as Cartier-Bresson called it, is yours alone. Is this personal freedom of choice important to you?
Yeah, you know, it's because, it's one's a release from the other, isn't it? You know, I mean, there's a sort of pressure. I mean, I find even the pressure, I go around and I feel I want to take a photograph today. So I wander around wherever it's Western Supermarket or something. And if I don't get a photograph, I come home really depressed, as James will tell you. So there's a certain pressure just taking a photograph because that's what you want to do. But when you're working on a film, you don't have that a similar pressure because there's all those people to help you. And obviously the director is the leader of the pack, as it were. So, you know, it's kind of an interesting, comparison between the two. On our podcast, we had a really lovely conversation with Harry Griart, the Belgian photographer, stills photographer, who I really, one of the photographers I admire most in the world, especially in their color work. And he started as a cameraman. And he said, after a while he gave it up, he couldn't stand doing what somebody else wanted him to do.
Yeah, because
that feeling, right?
That's the thing.
He wanted that total freedom.
You don't turn over.
That image is
not
my
yours.
image.
It's somebody else. It's the director's decision
really.
that to turn over, to press that button.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm going on about. It's
But
like your moment, your photograph, your call.
Yeah,
not the director's call.
Yeah,
not
but it's a much smaller thing, isn't it? I mean, I just take
but it's personal.
Sketches, but it's more personal in a way.
Yeah,
I'm as kind of pleased when I get a photograph. I come back some days. I got a photograph. There's one in the book of a little gull looking at a statue of a wooden lion in a kiddie's playground and painting. And I got that photograph. I just got it before the gull flew away, and I was so happy that day. Yeah. That's like, you know, finishing a day on a movie or more, a week on a movie, and it's gone all right. It's funny, isn't it?
It's almost therapeutic.
It is.
That feeling.
Yeah,
if it's that feeling you're garnering, it is almost like a therapy thing. You get, you know, not, but as a reaction to what you usually do. But that moment and capturing that moment.
But Dick, do you do still photography?
You do a lot.
Yes,
they do.
Yes.
And is it the same reasons?
It's absolutely liberating.
Yeah.
You know, a very different photography from Roger's, all portraits, but yes, the moment, the clicking of the button and thinking, oh yeah, I think I got that, and you know, reveal something of the person's life is a really big thing. It always has been with me. But I do less and less these days. It was much more, all my photography was much more about my stills photography, big camera, 2¼ square camera, was all about mostly going out to around the world as an assistant. When I became a documentary cameraman, it was quite a chore to take it with me. And I know that you
took a lot of the Masso, that documentary in Kenya, right?
Yeah.
So I saw some of them.
Three times I went there.
Beautiful.
But but when I was very young as an assistant, it was something that I used to be able to switch off from what I was doing. Just me, tribes people, whatever, and go with them and find a place and shoot. Just great feeling.
But also when you do stills, aren't you you just have one frame to tell a story, but when you're doing cinematography, you're telling the story through a lot of different frames. So that one frame has to do everything,
it
while not
does.
so in
It does.
cinematography.
Well, it's
right?
interesting, actually. Again, on the podcast, we talked to Alex Webb. I don't know if you
Oh, yeah, I
know
do
his
know
work,
his work. I've got
which
his
is
book,
quite
yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the
Oh,
images
oh.
are quite complex, right? And
Totally,
the color, and there's lots of things going on in the frame. And he also started out shooting film early in his career.
Right, really.
And but
That's smart.
if what I was going to say though is if you use that kind of his kind of imagery in a movie, I think it would be oversaturated, wouldn't it? It would be just you.
I wouldn't mind having a look though.
Yeah,
I wouldn't,
yeah,
I
no,
wouldn't,
no,
I wouldn't mind a chance.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's
I
so
don't.
much going on.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
you
so-
either hold the shot for a very long time so you
Yeah.
can absorb it all, or I don't know, you know.
There's a book of Alex Webb's that's available, at least one book, but probably many, but there's a book I've got, and it is actually quite mind-blowing, the color coordination of some of his shots and the use of color. You just almost can't believe it. It's like they're and I'm sure they're not, I'm sure they're straight up documentary street work, but they look like an art department's been in there for a week, which is his genius. And it just looks, they are so color.
I don't know how they do it. Him and Harry Green.
And of course in that, they wouldn't really work in black and white. It's color and the
I don't
melange.
know. Some of them I think definitely would.
But
I mean,
the mess and palette of the colours.
so much of it,
Do you shoot in color when you shoot stuff?
Both, but usually it was when I didn't have my camera with me and somebody would have a camera with black and white in, I'd take it, but a lot of mine are in color for very personal reasons. That I mean, it's also about, I started off doing a lot of black and white cinematography when I was an assistant, and I, in a way, at a certain point, I'd had enough black. I look forward to, because color really was new then. Certainly Eastman colour and that sort of modern colour was new, and it was exciting to use.
Well, that's interesting because I don't know if you remember, Harry Greer did a series of photographs in Morocco, and that was the first like photo book in colour that got respected by other photographers, because really the world of still photography was black and white up to it. And I think I'm right in saying he was one of the first photographers that worked in color that was offered a place in magazine.
I think
because so many worked in black and white.
That was it. And they looked down to people that were working in color.
Totally.
You like black and white because?
Well, I think I like black and white just because I was brought up with it. I was brought up looking at photographs of Bill Brandt, you know, and Roger Baden was a tutor for a short time at art college when I was at art college, and you know, so it's people like, you know, Stieglitz and you know, they're great.
Andre Curtis, I mean, we're wonderful. Paul Strand is one of my favorites.
White, I mean, you know, Margaret Julia Cameron, you know, the Victorian portrait.
I know the work,
But a lot of
black and white.
But does black and white make you focus more on the composition because color gives you a little bit of distraction, because
I think you see deeper into the subject matter. I think it strips away the superfluous, perhaps, influences of color, and we're so used to it now. I mean, these are years ago, but now. In 2022, I mean, we're saturated by color. So when you do see black and white, it allows you in more. I think it pulls you in more, draws you in more.
It's very interesting when Don McCullum was photographing, you know, famines and Vietnam, whatever. It would all be black and white, but I don't even remember. There was one particular Sunday, and I think it's the Sunday Times he was working for. There was a Sunday, double page spread in the middle, and it was Vietnam, and it was that road of dead bodies in color.
I remember that in
color.
And
it's strange because it was strange, but it was so shocking because it was color. Because it was like on your Sunday, and there were people wrote in and said, this is disgusting.
How dare
I was just sitting down to have my breakfast. I don't need this, and there it is in color. I thought that was really interesting. It was kind of
I
brilliant.
remember
But
that
for the
because,
most
of course,
part,
they did
yeah.
shoot in colour as well.
Yeah,
It was the black and white that he would choose for the
Yeah.
art
Yeah,
prints,
yeah.
Mhm.
but colour was also commissioned by the Sunday Times as, had to have colour as well. But it became, of course, a black and white art
It did, but
photography.
there's still a lot of the news guys work in black and white. James Natchway, who I think is one of the greatest of all time, most of his work is black and white. Yeah.
The images in the book are mostly quietly observational and contemplative, often seemingly caught moments, sometimes wry or amusing, mostly relaxed and always beautiful and impeccably presented. They all work extremely well together and offer a single and unique way of seeing, i.e. yours. So is that something that you just, that's the way you shoot, and that's the subject matter you shoot?
Yeah.
The rest is
Yeah.
just because you're the photographer behind the camera.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish I could take photographs like Alex Webb. I wish I was comfortable among people with my camera, but I'm not. So most of my photographs are pretty spare, but I do love photographing people, but often they're at quite a distance and it's more like a landscape. And it's like, I don't know, there's one shot in there, it's like a landscape of a kiddie's playground, and there's a boating pool, and there's a Union Jack flying, and on the other side there's a little girl on a swing, and she's just coming above this little hut in the front of the hut's got on the front Jolly Roger, and that's about my favorite photograph. Everything's so tiny that you always almost miss it, but I love just the feeling of the landscape and the insignificance of these little things within the frame. So I guess that's just the way I see it, but it's also part of frankly, my shyness and getting into people.
Yes,
I think it was
right when you're behind them, like those ladies sitting in the deck chairs when the camera's behind them looking at them. You're just behind them, and they can't even see you.
But I don't do like Joseph Kudelka, who one of the greats. He was said, if the photograph's no good, it's because you're too far away. You've got to get closer. But then he always kind of obviously interacted with his subjects, and basically he was much more involved, like you would be on a documentary. And both you and I have done those kind of documentaries where you spend weeks and months maybe with people, and you throw away the first week of footage because it's usually nothing.
Or not shoot at all, not bring the camera out even.
Or pretend.
Yeah.
Because it's usually people are so self-conscious. But that's not, I can't do that with a stills camera.
No.
It's funny, I could do it with a film camera on my shoulder, and it's almost like I feel I got a place there.
Yeah.
But with a stills camera, it's a bit of danger of being voyeuristic, I suppose. That's what I worry about sometimes.
A lot of the seaside shots are quite bleak. I mean, it's quite a bleak seaside in your
You want to put me on
Wouldn't
the
you say
couch,
that?
Dick? I mean, you're going to analyse it.
No, I will. That's the next question about analysis. But wouldn't you
Did
say
you have
they
a
are?
problem with your mother?
They're wintry. They're wintry and foreboding skies, choppy waves, and people sitting on the beach.
Well,
and this is what they do. Yeah. But
it's
they
not always
are.
that. I took a photograph the other month.
Out of season.
Yeah, but some of them, they're usually out of season, but some of them are in season, but it's a bad weather day. But I took one the other month, and it was in Tor Bay, and there was a lot of the liners were, moored in the bay because of COVID. So there's a big liner out the bay. There's a guy on the beach, like sort of resting, and it was on his back. And then there was the sort of screen with the stripes that was around something, this little thing there. And over on the left, there's like a cone, like they put around a work site, this little cone with stripes on it. And there was a really lowering, strange sky. There's something about it. I was thinking about that. Is that photograph any good? And I couldn't sleep the other night. I thought, I really like that photograph.
And you took it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you did take it. Yeah.
I don't know why, but I really like that photograph because the guy is looking at this liner that's parked out in the bay, and is he wishing he was somewhere else because it must be cold on the beach and it's grey
Well-
sky. I don't know. There was so much going on. I felt that I really liked it, but it's a very
Yeah.
bleak photograph.
But
Sorry.
your photographs always have a lot of irony in it and also kind of a story. You look
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you say, what is that person thinking? Or why is that person swimming away?
Yeah.
The
You know,
ones I
from
like,
that.
are like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
The lady with the
Yeah.
brolly looking at the
Yeah.
nude
Yeah.
lying
That
in the
was
sun
great.
while it's pissing down with rain.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that you could say, well, that's bleak, but it's also funny, but
Yeah.
it's got great irony. But it is that the premise of the reality of it is that she's in a bus shelter, sheltering from the rain, and life is not so great,
Yeah.
really.
Is
But,
she
Mhm.
wishing she was where the girl is
Yeah,
lying
right.
out in the
or
sun?
wishing she was the girl.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that's,
yeah.
that's the story that
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
in that
Yeah.
photograph. Is she dreaming of when
Yeah. Or
she
is
could have
she-
been that girl, you know?
Or is she prudish and
Yeah,
because the
and
girl's
doesn't like it.
because the girl's naked?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
So I don't know. Yeah, that was.
but they
rarely
do,
get a photograph like that.
yeah. But yeah, just to go on a little bit, from the very first images in the book to the last, you seem to have always been drawn by similar subjects and moments. As a viewer, I felt this a long, relaxed walk through your life, exploring these byways along the way, accompanied by a camera, perhaps a means of switching off from the worries and stress of your professional life. Now, partly it's answered that,
Mm,
but would you say that it is
mm.
a walk through your life? Because it looks like it on the...
Yeah, I wish there were more. I mean, for a while when we met and I started work on documentaries, and then I didn't carry a camera. It was enough, you know, it was like if you didn't have an assistant.
I didn't carry mine.
You would
like that.
carry enough film gear and a spare mags and you're doing all that. You couldn't carry a stills camera.
No, you
And I
just
really
couldn't deal
regret
with the
that,
both of them. You couldn't deal with
yeah,
both of them.
yeah, all the places I went, you know,
Yeah.
Africa and India, I wish I'd had a stills camera with me, but I didn't. So otherwise it is, you know, the only documentary I was on where I took my camera was when I went around the world in the yacht, you know, so I definitely took my camera on that. But yeah, so it is a little bit of a,
Okay.
you know,
All
bits
right.
of my life. Yeah.
Those images of that round the world yacht race, there's one in it that is got to be one of the hardest, I would say, the hardest marine photograph almost that I've ever seen is when they're you're at one end of the yacht and three of them, I think, at the other end. They are all done out in like armor. It looks like they're wearing armor and going into battle, which they are, with raging sea behind. I mean, it looks indescribably difficult, that. And I just wanted to talk to you about this because I remember you going on this.
Yeah.
It was only you and Eddie Tice.
Yeah.
It was
No, it
after
wasn't
we
Eddie
met.
Tice. It wasn't Eddie Tice.
Oh, I thought it was Eddie.
No, it's a guy called Noel Spark, who was actually a staff cameraman at Granada
Crikey.
or ATV.
Right.
He was a staff cameraman and he wanted to come on as the cameraman, but they'd already hired me. So he came on and did sound.
Oh, I didn't know that. Was he a sailor?
He was quite an experienced sailor, yes, which
As
is
opposed
why
to
he
you.
wanted to do it, as opposed to me, who was somebody who was sick at the sight of a goldfish bowl.
Well, I mean, you're in those shots. You're going round the Cape. I mean, but it looks so tough. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about it because I remember you telling me. I was absolutely aghast because, and then I saw the documentary, and of course things weren't great on board.
Yes,
Relationship-wise.
certainly were.
So not only did you have to survive
Yes.
what to me looked like hell on earth to me, but you also had to deal with these relationships, which actually in the end, I suppose, worked for the film because it wasn't a happy. It was like two factions, almost like mutinous.
Yes,
and
it was. You're right, though. It's interesting because both Noel and I were very aware that our presence, even though we were both sailing, we were doing as much on watch as anybody else, and then we were making the film when we was, you know, would have been sleeping basically, which was very hard in itself because a lot of the very active stuff you couldn't film because you're on deck pulling the sails down or avoiding an iceberg or something silly, you know.
Or
so
trying
you
not to
couldn't
go
shoot it, and
overboard.
then
Yeah, right.
when
Try not to
when the
fall
boat was sort of safe, you get the camera and shoot, but it had
It's
all
kinda
happened,
boring,
you know,
yeah.
so it was really frustrating. And but yes, we were very aware that our presence was causing some of the friction amongst the crew. And
Why?
yes,
What was the friction?
well, just us being there and filming, and people were very, you know, they didn't want to be filmed in certain circumstances, and some people were unhappy, but we wanted to film them, their side of why they were unhappy. And one guy left the boat in New Zealand and stuff.
But they
You know,
signed
and
up
so
for it
it's-
on the basis of there being a camera on board.
They were doing it before
Oh, well,
the camera we were brought
right.
on, because they were part of this training outward bound school in North
But
Scotland.
it looked, and the documentary, it made it really tough. The two factions that you could, one was at the front of the
It was a
boat,
bit,
one
yeah.
was at the back of the boat,
Yeah,
and they didn't really talk.
it was, well, it was a bit like that.
And it was like 9
for a while,
months, right?
Yeah.
Any 9
But
months.
the other thing is, which I think is worth talking about, because it's a salutary story about shooting on film and not on digital or whatever, is that when you arrived in New Zealand, I think you sent all the footage that you'd shot on the first half of the journey.
Well, it was the second
to-
leg.
yeah.
We stopped in Cape Town, sent it back, all okay. Stopped in New Zealand, Christmas, sent it back, the film back. Got a word from the editing department. It's all black. And I said, "We mean it's all black. How can it be black? And we're about to start on another leg in a week or so. If it's all black, what can
What
I
are we
do?"
doing wrong?
And I never got anything. We went off and we had a zoom lens. I took it apart.
No, I remember
took the
remember
camera
that.
apart,
I remember you
took
telling
it
me
back.
that you took the camera apart, put
Yeah.
it back together, nothing. There was
Then
nothing.
we went on the next leg, which was
Thinking it was all
Auckland to
screwed,
Rio,
yeah.
thinking, well, I don't know if we're getting anything at all.
Ah, terrible.
Anyway, when I got back to London, you know, months and months later, I went in the cutting room. I said, "Can I see the stuff that's black?" And I took it out the steam back, you know, the flatbed, and looked it up. Yeah, it was all black, not just the frame, but the sprocket around the sprockets and everything.
Oh,
This film stock had been fogged. They were using cheap stock to print it
oh
on,
my God.
and that was fogged, that whole batch. And they reprinted, and the images were fine.
So it wasn't a negative at all.
No, it was no, it
Oh,
was
just
the
the
print
print.
stock. Yeah, the print stock was
But
garbage.
fancy getting back on board, thinking that
Yeah,
everything you
I
had done was
thought,
NG.
I thought all that was NG, and what I was doing at that time, and that was, well, that was that was Auckland to Rio, so that was going around Cape Horn. It was the whole
God.
bit, and I was thinking, maybe this is
What's
all
the
for naught.
point? Yeah.
Oh,
It was
terrible.
very weird. And then we got to Rio, and it was the first day of the carnival, which is another story. But then I drove down to Sao Paulo with the film stock to send it off from a agency in Sao Paulo to send it back. And I'm thinking, I don't know why I'm doing this. It's probably all black. I don't know. So it was a bit upsetting. So
That's what it reminded me of, looking at those photographs, that
yeah.
story.
Yeah,
that whole
yeah.
thing.
I'd have always had the photographs anyway, if I hadn't had the film.
We covered this really about the black and white and your decision to only shoot in black and white. I think
Yeah, well now, you
it's
know.
in that same tradition of these photographers from yesteryear, who we've mentioned, and I've put down, and you've never deviated from that. You've stuck to it, in fact.
Well, I mean, I now shoot with a digital camera, so actually I'm shooting color. I mean, I had a monochrome camera, but it's no good anymore, and I can't get it repaired. Anyway, that's another story. But I'm shooting with a, you know, so the image comes out in color, and I kind of like, okay, I go in Photoshop with it in color, and then I kind of use the channels to adjust it, which is a really good thing, you know.
But some of them are quite nice in color, actually.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
funny.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's funny because even for the book, there was one or two I thought, oh, I'll put that in, but it's nice in color. And then I made it black and white just because expediency and cost of the book. And I thought, actually, it's better in black and white. I prefer in black and white. So, yeah. But I don't know about you. When you're on a movie, are you seeing it in color or black and white? I
Um,
know you might be shooting it black and white, the end result might be black and white,
No,
but when you're looking
no,
at
I'm seeing it in colour.
oh,
I am. I think I'm seeing it in colour.
yeah.
Yeah, the colour palette. Yeah, I am. That was actually one of the questions I've put here, which I think we've touched on, is do you believe that colour blocks the viewer from seeing right into the heart of the image, i.e. colour equals too much eye candy these days, too much
I
information?
do.
I mean, this is not in movie work, because movie work's different. I would say film work is different.
I think in both.
And do you think so? It's
Yeah,
the stills that I like to look into in black and white, but
Right, but there's some still photographers. The great Russian stills photographer, Gregory Pinkhausen, who started off first, you might have seen it, the first photograph that I probably well known of his is from the set of Stalker, Tarkovsky's Stalker.
Yeah.
And it's Andrei Tarkovsky standing in those mounds, those strange mounds in the the center of the zone. And but he became one of the great color photographers. And there's a wonderful photograph of his, I think it's his. It's a whole load of chickens in this shed. And the back of the shed's quite light. All the chickens are in shadow, so there's always funny pattern, except for one that's in a splash of sunlight. And there's a chicken with a red, crest and a thing, wattle, and it's white, but there's red on it. And it's just this one head in this sun. And it's like, this is the most amazing image. And I look at that and think, now that's color. Now that wouldn't be the same in black and white, because it's the red in a shot that's basically black and white. It's just extraordinary, and it's not digitally manipulated. That's what it was. And his photographs, look at his photographs, they're really quite stunning in color. But on the other hand, I find a lot of photographs that the colors just, eye candy. But I think that about movies, there's a lot of movie, you could say that about.
I know you're a great fan of Tarkovsky and the work of Russian cinematographers, like the work on Ivan's Childhood, which is absolutely fantastic. And he, the DP, Yudin, wasn't it? He was at Cam-Rimage one year.
Oh wow!
And he talked about Ivan's childhood.
Oh wow!
And he got a lot of questions about that. And he said that one day in the vehicle that they were in, like recceing, he saw it outside the window of the vehicle and got them to stop, and then stepped out. And they stepped out. Tarkovsky was there, and they looked down, and there was that image, basically, which they used for the film, of him crossing this no man's land in the mud and water with flares going off over it. And he talked about it as it was an accident, is what I'm saying. It was just a simple twist of fate. There, and they dressed it properly and used it there. How things like that happen as an accident.
But I think that's interesting. There's three movies that are quite similar, and they're three of, I think, the greatest war movies ever made. So Ivan's Childhood, black and white. Come and See, color, which is, so Ivan's Childhood was what, 60, early 60s?
Yeah.
Come and See was mid 80s. And the other film was a more recent film a few years ago called Painted Bird.
Yes.
Right, which is black and white.
Yes, I know.
Now, can you imagine those three films in any other way? If Ivan's Childhood had been color, I don't think it'd work.
No, it wouldn't.
There would have been no way. I can't imagine it would have been as powerful, but Tarkovsky's made wonderful color movies, but that for me is a black and white film. And Come and See, would that have worked in black and white? It wouldn't have been the same.
No.
The burning church, and I don't think the horror of it would have been quite the same. It's interesting because the kid in Ivan's Childhood in black and white, there was something so stark, so
of course, once you've seen it and imagined it in black, then you couldn't ever see it any other way.
Well, that's true. But then you get into the end of Ivan's Childhood, you get into documentary footage of Berlin, at the fall of Berlin and the Russians in Berlin. So it felt like you were part of that movie, and yeah, I don't think Come and See could have worked quite so well in black and white. And then, but Painted Bird again, then it's black and white, and I felt it was perfect for that. Maybe because
couldn't be
it's a
any other
similar
way. It's like
story.
White Ribbon, really. You can't imagine it.
Yeah, maybe you can't imagine it, but it's something about the loneliness of the kid
Yeah.
in Painted Bird and Ivan Childhood,
Mm.
the kid, and that's, I don't know. There's just something. The black and white really worked for it, but I don't think it always does.
Do you think
sometimes it's pretentious.
1917 would have worked in black and white?
Yeah, I
Do you-
do actually.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I think it would have. I think it would have, but I don't think it would have necessarily reached the same audience.
No,
I don't
it
think
couldn't.
it was. I
But
don't think it was.
There's so
aimed
much
that way.
reticence to allowing one to shoot in black and white
But
Yeah,
also
Yeah,
one of
at
the
that
reasons
level.
yeah.
for 1917 is all the pictures that you see of World War I are black and white. So
Yeah.
it did seem odd
Yeah.
in the beginning when we were doing color, but then we got used to it. But
One of the
No, it's just a thought that a film like that could have been, but
Yeah.
would it have made it too much documentary and not reach that audience?
Yeah.
Very likely it wouldn't have done.
Here's an interesting thing. Frank Hurley, right?
Yeah.
Frank Hurley was on Shackleton's
That's right.
expedition,
Yeah.
photographed the boat going down in Antarctic, right?
Yeah.
Got out of that, went straight out of that, went to the front line of First World War. Some of the greatest photographs from the First World War were taken by Frank Hurley. Isn't that interesting? I think.
Obviously in black and white.
In black and white,
Yeah.
yeah.
He was a brilliant photographer.
Brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant. There's some of the war photographs are stunning. To go from
No, so
talk about going to danger. I mean, from the Antarctic, and they all thought they were going to die there on that elephant island and all that, and then come back, and then he goes to the Somme.
I mean, you love In Cold Blood. I know that because you've always
Mm.
talked about
Yeah.
In
That's
Cold Blood.
another interesting.
And,
Yeah.
and both of you became very friendly with
Connie
Yeah,
and
Conrad,
and visited him where he
in
lived.
Tahiti.
yeah.
And you used to talk to me about he was the greatest rain, chronicler of rain and
Yeah.
shooter of rain,
Yeah.
and he is, I think,
Yeah.
like In Cold Blood, with the rain running
Yeah,
down
yeah,
their
yeah.
faces. I mean, it's just indelible images, and that was in black and white. And I can't even imagine that being a colour film.
No, that's interesting. Is it the material? Is it because it's a reportage? You know,
Yes.
it's actually.
Yes,
I don't know. I don't know. I think that is. I mean, of its style, I definitely think that's one of the best, if not the best, photographed black and white film ever. I mean, you could look at HUD or something, but that's a slightly different style.
yes,
But
it's a
that
more
kind
Hollywood
of-
style. That is,
Yeah, that kind of heightened realism that Conrad got out of that
Oh,
movie is just
also,
stunning.
On that too, they took such care with the transitions
Oh, yeah,
going
the
from one
shots
scene
from one
to
the other, yeah.
another that it was, we saw it recently over the pandemic,
Yeah.
and we were
Yeah.
really struck
Stunning,
by
stunning.
how much care they took, because
Mm.
oftentimes you're so under the gun when you're shooting that you just shoot the scene, shoot
You're
that
not sure
scene,
where
and
it's
you're not
going to edit. Yeah.
thinking about how it's going to join
Yeah, but
together.
the joins are perfectly done. That's really interesting.
So, I mean, you know, there's other films you've mentioned to me in the past in black and white, things like On the Beach.
Oh, it's
With
really
Seppi
like-
Rotuno.
They're all a bit depressing, aren't they? when
Yeah,
you put it
right.
like that?
I know. Yeah,
They're all a bit apocalyptic, really.
yeah. So there we go. So black and white as a,
Sorry about this.
black and white as a choice for your stills seemed, because your color work, and especially now, your color work is so heightened. I mean, in like
Movies.
on Blade Runner 2049,
Yeah.
you could say,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and to a large extent on Skyfall. The last
Yeah.
few films, it seems to have like elevated to another level of color, which are deeply immersive colors and
Yeah.
working as complete composite palettes.
But isn't that subject? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, if I was, you know, I mean, in between those, it's like Goldfinch, which is quite muted. And,
Yes,
you know, so I think it's, I think you're a chameleon, aren't you? You go from a project to project, and that's what's right for that particular project, you know.
And the challenge of the difference.
Yeah, the challenge of the difference. Yeah.
I put down a thing here about, which of course means a lot to me, as I shot documentaries too. I put down many of your stills offer intriguing backstories behind the image. You know, like your documentary route showing. And then I went on to ask you about, don't you look back on those documentary years with some nostalgia?
Oh, yeah.
That golden period of such freedom, that gave us such freedom, such small crews then, sometimes, you know, 2 or 3, no script, just making it up as you went along. No celebrity presenter up front, making it more about them than the subject matter.
Yes.
And instead letting people speak in their own language with subtitles. Such a pure form of filmmaking it was, but it didn't last.
No, I mean, I think both of us were lucky to get in on the end of the golden age of documentary.
Yeah, we weren't in the middle of it. We definitely were at the tail end.
You did a lot more than I did, but I mean, I did a few, you know, like a few films, like particularly one in Eritrea, and the covering the war in Eritrea in what would that have been, 80s, 82 or something. I can't even remember now.
And Nuba and India.
And Nuba and India, but you know, as you say, you're kind of in a situation, you're there. I mean, Eritrea was just 3 of us, and we were just trying to find the story in a way.
Loading your own
magazines.
You're obviously no assistant, fooling yourself.
You know, I was Eddie Tice, myself, and a journalist, Sarah Errington, and basically just we eventually found this one village that we kind of thought we would structure the whole documentary about, because the village seemed to stand in for the society they were trying to create in Eritrea. Anyway, so I mean, it's an experience that very big in my head. But I have
it's like
great fondness for that, you know.
Director carrying a wad of money.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody else carrying it. There was no, like, you know, accounts department with you. It was just, and you were lucky to carry.
We didn't have a director. That was even better. No, it was Eddie and Sarah and myself.
Yeah.
And we would just sort of, in the morning or the evening, we would say, well, how are we going to do this? Who should we interview? What do we need? What's going to happen tomorrow? You know, it was great. It was brilliant.
What was it like for you guys when you had done documentaries and then you started doing features, and suddenly you had to follow the storyline when before you were finding the storyline?
Yeah.
Did you tend to go off book a lot when you started?
But I think for both of us, though, luckily, there was a period of doing like mad music of the late 70s, early 80s. And a crazy world of pop promos.
Well, yours were mad. Mine wasn't. I did Meatloaf. He was mad.
It was a buffer.
Bananarama.
It was a buffer, wasn't it? Between that world of documentaries, it came, you know, it was like a sort of, you know,
it's a good way of looking at it.
A mad ride into the next feature film thing.
Right.
So it's not that you led out onto a feature film straight off a documentary. I think I'd have run a mile.
But I do think it was a great experience for shooting fiction. Just because documentaries, you're just trying to find, where do I put the camera to tell the story? How do I condense what's happening in front of me? And how many times were you in somewhere like, I don't know, Rhodesia or was in wherever, Kenya or something, and you didn't even understand the language, but somehow you knew what was happening.
Almost always.
It's very strange.
Because there's nobody at your shoulder whispering to you.
Sense, don't you?
You're just watching them and observing them and seeing and kind of preempting what they were going to do next and go with it. I think everything builds on the other, because if I look in the book, it was interesting going back to look at the photographs I took. It was just a year of my life in North Devon. After I left art college and before I went to National Film School, I was lucky enough to work for this art centre in North Devon, and it was just, my brief was
photograph country life. I
Very
mean,
nice.
what is that?
Very
I
nice.
didn't know what to do. It scared me silly, actually. And I don't think I did a very good job. But I look back at the photographs now, and it's really interesting how I think I was trying to tell a story in the same way as making a documentary.
Well, they are like that.
You know,
The
yeah, you're
photographs-
trying to get a sense of something in a frame and put a few frames together to tell a little story. Like I did a whole thing about, well, I took a whole sort of stills about a stag hunt, and then I went back and made a film about the same stag hunt when I was at the
NFTs.
yeah, and then I think taking that later into film, I thought that was a really good grounding for using a camera, a film camera, and telling a story. And then documentaries, I think, is very much both yours and I, the way we see on a feature set, on a on a drama, is very much grounded from that sort of documentary background. I think so. Even the way you I like, like right now there's a China ball up there.
Which was your idea.
It was your idea. We got a picture of it. It's really nice. But that doesn't come from a standard feature world, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No, I mean,
So that is something I want to ask you
Did
about.
Did you ever watch, Dougie Slocum or
With you, I did.
But how many people?
We did a film of
little
the film.
documentary. But how many times did you actually do that before you started shooting feature work? How many times did you see David Watkin or whatever?
I did quite a lot of
Did
films.
you? I
and
never
filming.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, I did.
Apart from what we did together
Right.
on that documentary, I did other ones that were about different filmmakers filming. Yeah, I did. I did one about David Lean in India making.
But did that influence you then, the way that was being shot?
Yes.
And what?
Yes, it did.
Ah.
Not necessarily that film, go into it, but I thought to myself, and there I was with the camera on my shoulder doing a South Bank show about lean and thinking I could do this.
Wow.
No, I did. I thought it became more and more. I became more and more obsessed by it as this, because we were there for like a month of filming in all sorts, and I thought I really want this. I really want it. I could do this. So it was quite an education watching them.
Yeah.
I mean, we watched Dougie Slocum doing some remarkable things on. It was a Pirates of Penzance, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we saw incredible things going on, like
that was
Brooks being brought down from the rail at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, so that everybody could go home. And then production would call it a day. But I want number 43 down here on the floor.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
I do. I mean, and the producers were going wild.
Say,
But,
that's a wrap.
how long is it going to be? He was an amazing man.
He was 5 shots a day.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
He said
Wow.
5 shots a day.
Yeah.
But
Stages joined together through the tunnel and the
That was
garden.
brilliant,
Yeah, I mean, really fantastic. But it did give me an insight. I did do quite a few of them, and it did. But I mean, I have to say that the biggest insight I had was when you asked me to do some second unit shooting on 1984. Now that was.
Well, I was going to say, because that
the first
seeing
time
Dougie Slocum lighting Pirates and Penzance when he asked for the Brute arc to come down behind the camera. That's the first time I saw a Brute, and the second time I saw a Brute was when Biggles, John Higgins, my gaffer, brought it on the set of 1984 because we felt we needed Brutes to light this chestnut tree cafe with hard light as though it was sunlight. So we said, we'll have 7 Brutes, please, not knowing what the hell they were going to do, but having seen them on that set.
fantastic.
It's funny.
Because I've got a question about that. I've got a question about that right now, if I can find it in my paperwork here, which is about 1984, really, and your because I've got a question about it, because after 1980, no, I've got to find it. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment.
It's always better than when you number the sheets. Dick.
Oh yeah, I know. I didn't get that far. I only finished a minute before
That's
we.
my problem. I did it with some lighting pages the other day. And I can't figure what order they're in. And Biggles did that. He dropped all these
Oh,
pages.
that was funny.
And he
yeah.
said, now I can't put the lighting diagram to the set. I said, one set's going to be lit totally differently because you've got the order wrong.
I've now juggled them up, so I'm all over the place now. Okay, so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about 1984 because, you know, I mean, you before that you'd done Another Time, Another Place with Mike Radford, but 1984, and that was a very lovely film, Another Time, Another Place. But rather than going into that now, the 1984 was kind of pivotal. I would say it's a pivotal film for you. And obviously it was a pivotal film for me because even doing second unit for you, I was experiencing something which I really wanted. And you gave me the opportunity of coming out with you and doing it. I saw a lot of things happening on that film with you and John Higgins, Biggles, doing things that I'd never seen before.
Well, you hadn't either. So.
Yeah, right, making it up like this. It was like back then that as if you were rebelling against conventional industry practices. Here we go. And that you were determined to go another way. I would say this is true because this is all about the bleach bypass as well. It was that the whole feel of the film. It was almost like, I don't know, punk cinema. It was like taking conventional industry standard practices and throwing them out the room, throwing them out. I've always felt that this was very courageous of you, pretty fearless, really. For example, no, it was. It has to be said, it was. For example, in 1984, I watched you light night exterior scenes with 10Ks and 5K Fresnels. At that time, I'd never seen night work like this lit by anything other than HMIs, because in that period, once carbon arc lighting had gone out the window and was the demise of, and HMIs came in, it was the standard practice on all films to use HMIs for night work. And I have to say that it was the ruination of many British films of that period. That's what I really think. That because it was a brutal, hard, blue light, unforgiving in any way. And people just used to use it on like whole streets, buildings,
whack it down
and whack it down. And quite often in the UK, they'd put it on frontal. It wasn't even like on cranes in the distance coming back and backlighting. It was like front light. I mean, it was like, you know, but this is what you did. This was the standard industry practice, tried and tested. And if you went another way, you were really looked down upon. Like you were
well, I was
not
anyway,
professional.
I was from the National Film School, so I was looked down upon a bit anyway. But we won't go there. Not now. That's all history. But I think going back to that whole documentary thing and watching Dougie Slocum do Pirates of Penzance, that was probably my only experience of being on a film set, a feature film set, except for I did second unit, some second unit work on Memoirs of a Survivor that Walter Lassley shot.
Yeah.
But other than that, I didn't really know what anybody did.
Yeah.
So when Mike and I did 1984, we knew, for instance, we wanted to do it all in camera. So therefore we found ways of doing the projection. Every projection in that film is in camera. There's no effects, there's no CG, nothing. So we found all these different techniques, from, you know, huge carbon arc projectors to little sort of old-fashioned TVs with scan lines in little boxes. So, but I think we went that way because we didn't know any better. You know, it wasn't like we were trying to rebel. We just had something in our minds and we didn't know how to do it. So we just found our own way to do it. I think it's as simple as that. Like I say, when Biggles and I got these 7 brute arcs,
yes,
it just seemed that's what we needed to make a sharp sunlight effect. You know, as simple as that, really.
But if you had known about all these conventional lights and you'd used them, it wouldn't have been anything like what
I
it
think
turned
I'd
out
have been
to be.
scared silly.
Yeah, but a very
You
different,
know?
more. Yeah, it wouldn't have been the same thing at all. It was what
No.
you used and the
Uh,
lighting gags you used and multiple lighting gags that I saw you.
Yeah, but I still
use.
do that. I think that's
Yeah.
really from partly
No,
from a
no,
documentary thing, and that's just the way I see things. You know?
You still do it.
Yeah.
You still do it when, for instance, in 1980, not in 1984, but in Mountains of the Moon, which I think
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah.
1989, when I came out to Kenya
Yeah,
with you.
yeah,
to do,
yeah.
I remember
Great
very
experience.
vividly you lighting an African hut. It was like a house, really, a grand chief's
That
house
big,
with rafters and everything. It was for
Yeah.
a big night interior scene. I don't even recall it, but it was where they tortured.
It's the I forgot the guy's name, but it's actually a true story. True king of Uganda.
Absolutely
killer,
cruel,
Yeah.
despicable despot.
Yeah.
And it was crowded. It was night, and it was crowded with background and actors, and really difficult set to deal with. So many people, fire, firelight, smoke. But you had done it from a completely different way than would have been done conventionally. You did it basically with a whole multitude of blondes, and they were up in the rafters, and they were all pointing up at 45 degrees to bounce off stippled silver, stippled gold, stippled gold reflectors, and they were on dimmers. I'd brought them all back to a dimmer, so they were down 20 or 30% or whatever to give a really nice warm look. And there we go. And it looked absolutely fantastic, but it also gave you the opportunity to shoot really any which way. Here's the thing: in limited schedules and tight, and got to get the scene in. This rig worked every which way, and I'm sure you were taking them down in the front and putting them up at the back, and there were all sorts of gags going on. But I always remembered it, and I started using that same system of bounce on stippled silver or gold. But the point of my story is,
what is the point of your story?
Here it is. You use the same thing on Skyfall, and very likely
next week.
very like no, but what I'm saying is that you haven't changed your modus operandi, your method of
not
going.
really. No,
you've evolved and refined it. So there on Skyfall at the church at the end of the film, when Ellis dies, you were using 40 blondes, I think,
right outside
against 12 by 12s of stippled gold. Stippled gold. So in a way, it's the same thing that you were just adapting that, but it's the same approach to lighting, because you get the same soft light, and that can't be. So it's very low tech.
Roger is
very low tech.
I'd seen Mountains of the Moon not that long ago, because I actually really liked the film.
Also, because we remastered it.
Yeah, and we remastered it. But you just reminded me, I never realized that's what I did on that scene. That big hat. Because it was, so now I remember, because I remember doing it. And it was a hell of a challenge. But the thing was, on that film, as you know, working with Bob Brafelson, he was wonderful. It had one of the nicest experiences I think I've ever had.
Yeah, and one of the nicest experiences that he's ever had as well.
Yes, we would swap in notes over Christmas, and it was really sweet. He got in touch again and was saying exactly that. But well, the thing about it was, I was working so closely with him on the shot. Like, he's so much about the shot and the camera angle and that the lighting wanted to be something that was there, that you could have that freedom, you like me operate. So I like to be really connected to a director like that, because that's so much of the fun. So a lot of the time you feel you want to light the space. Obviously you're lighting it so you can change it a little bit from shot to shot, but really you want to be with the camera and the director and just really finessing what the shot is. So
Yes,
that's
but do
my
you-
style, you know, that's why I
Yeah.
do it anyway,
But
because
do
I
you-
still operate.
But that thing about operating, do you think part of your this this lighting technique you've got, where you can basically use the same rig everywhere? I mean, it can work for you 360.
Yeah.
You only have to really adjust the dimming, and
Yeah, well, that's part of the trick,
and then
yeah.
you have it. Do you think that comes and stems from you operating yourself, that you have got this thing about never being called out for anything going slow,
A little bit.
that
yeah.
you're,
Someone
Sorry
at the
about that.
door.
we'll carry on, that that in fact it's just a thing about being prepared and not having any producer have you know, being able to say you need an operator,
Yeah.
you know, that.
Well, I don't know
It's
about,
like-
I don't know if you got that, but I got that. I mean, I got that very much on 1984. That, you know, the whispering, and not even whispering, actually right to my face. We don't think you'll be able to do this
do
and
both.
operate. You can't do both. That's not done.
That wasn't done.
No,
It
And
wasn't
I
done
mean,
then.
so yes, it was really in my mind. I am not going to be holding it up. I mean, it
Yeah.
was different because I was working with Mike, you know, Radford, so we were.
I know, but
pretty
it's
in
not
sync then, but
necessarily
still, you
down
know.
to him, is it?
No, it wasn't. It was coming
If
from
somebody-
elsewhere.
yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't him, but there was definitely that pressure that, yeah, if you're seen to be holding it up because
You haven't got an
yeah,
operator
yeah,
there,
yeah. I mean,
and you're and the buck stops with
Yeah.
you.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I have had it.
No,
I
it's
have had it.
really, but so much of about it is not only that, it's about the rest of your crew.
Yes.
I one terrible day in 1984, I overslept.
Oh, really? I
I
didn't know this
overslept,
story.
yes. I overslept in a mad panic. I'm driving to, I can't remember, Shepperton or Pine. No, it's Twickenham. We were shooting Twickenham. I was a mad panic, and I got to the set probably half an hour after the call. And the shot had been they were setting up the shot that morning because we decided the shot the night before. And I remember distinctly parking outside the stage where I probably wasn't meant to park, walking straight in the stage, got on the dolly and shot the shot right off without even doing rehearsal, because I'd
my
asked them to set
God.
the tracking shot, and I
Wow.
can remember it as clear as day. I walked in, I got on it and just shot the shot. It was really weird.
Yeah.
And nobody said anything.
All right. Yeah.
Nobody said anything. It was really,
So wait for a second. Let's talk about operating, because Dick, one thing on the podcast, when we talk to cinematographers, we would ask them between operating and lighting, which would you give up? And we know Roger would give up lighting before operating. What's your feeling? Aha,
Very difficult choice, that.
yeah,
That's a good question. That.
yeah. Do you always operate?
Yes, always, but not necessarily.
Yes, but no.
Not necessarily. Sometimes I do bring in to utilize two cameras.
Yeah, well.
I mean,
yeah.
it's like, you know, it's difficult to get through it without having this pressure put on you to have two cameras.
Mhm, yeah,
And sometimes the second camera is brought in
yeah.
down the line if they feel that, you know, we're not getting enough coverage or it's going a bit slower. And they'll bring in another camera, and then I decide what shot I'm going to do and what the B camera is going to do. And it's not necessarily that operator is going to do a camera work. I might well do that.
Right.
But also, I very much like doing B camera because it's edgier and often longer.
Yes.
And
you
often
can
more
choose, yeah.
it's more intuitive.
Yeah.
So I often do that. But one way or the other, I'm never off a camera. I'm never sitting at a monitor watching somebody else's work. I'm there. And yeah, I've got a lot to say about what I think the other cameras should be doing and how they should go about it. But then the people who work for me know that, and they're pretty intuitive about what I hate and what I like. But yeah, sometimes on a lot of films, 2 cameras is the only way they do it, really. And then it's a matter of desperately trying to hold on to both focal lengths being similar and not being at 45 degrees to each other.
Right.
So rather choosing mid shots on each one that would give the coverage, and then longer on them, but not going very, very long on one to get a close up. This is where it falls down, and a wide lens like a 16 or an 18 on the other one to get a wide shot as well. I mean, the sound guys, worst nightmares
right, exactly.
of seeing that. But
does it ever really save time?
It doesn't really
Other than
seem to.
action or specific. I mean, I've done multiple cameras on scenes where it's ad-libbed and you're never going to get continuity unless you do cross angles or something. But obviously action scenes, I mean, sometimes we had 11 cameras on Skyfall, but does it really save time having 2 cameras? Because I don't think so. And I don't think it's
a compromise.
Maybe it's the kind of films that I like working on, but I think you have 2 cameras, so you have 2 camera crews, the whole thing gets escalated.
I know, it's a lot.
And the actors are surrounded by millions of people.
Yeah, and a lot of cameras surrounding them too, where you can't get into the desired position. You're adjusting map boxes.
And I don't think it's
no, it's true. It's true. And sometimes I do cross shoot. Actually, cross shooting is something I quite enjoy doing. If I can, something clicks inside me and I think I can get that look, I could cross shoot this. Of course, it goes down really well, and it is a big time consuming, a big time saver.
But it's got to be a particular style, because John and Ethan Cohen couldn't cross shoot because they shoot mostly wide flat singles with the eye line really close. So you can't do
you can't get
unless you do 2 cameras between people and they're way far apart. Which it would be totally ridiculous for the scene. For the actors.
That's true.
So then if you're doing French overs or something, then you can do, or even front.
Well, it has to be French overs, and then moving in for the close. You can get in there to there for the closer shots, but you can do it.
You can do it.
It takes quite a lot of time.
That's a certain style of angle.
I'd say it's for performance more than anything. It's not for the cinematography. It's not for the cinematography. It's for the actors, and of course they love it because they can just on a 2-hander or whatever, they can just go anywhere.
It's all, don't have to do the work of continuity.
Well, it really can be really great, and I do quite a lot of that. I quite enjoy it. I can see it almost earning its keep more like that than when you're side by side and going, because to swing a lens is nothing. But no, I'm not sure that does save time, but also I do leave the other camera on a set to mop it up, to clean it up, certain things that we haven't done, and I move on and leave them there to do that in the same lighting rig, whatever. And again, the people I work with are in tune with that. But no, it's compromise. But it doesn't answer the question about what I'd give up. No, it doesn't. Because I do very much like lighting, and I do very much like operating, so I can't answer that. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to give
I find lighting terrifying, so I would give that. I do. I find lighting terrifying, but I love finding frames. So that's why I'm happiest with my stills camera and nobody else around.
So that really answers that question really that I was getting to and called out by. Now, but also this thing about operating and not operating, right, and not getting accused of needing an operator and being slow. So having this very meticulous prep can work the other way as well, right? By operating yourself, you of course have got more control. If it's a true operator who the director talks with a lot, And that's
Yeah,
why
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
that be the case?
Yeah.
You can, to a certain extent, be ruled out
Yeah.
of decision making, which is fundamental to the look of the film. So it can really work for it. And I put here, I remember that we talked in London before you started prep on No Country for Old Men. And you were very vexed about this massive night exterior scene that you had to shoot out in the desert.
Yeah, I'm always vexed.
Vexed.
Yeah, very vexed. The Coens had a shot list, which I'm sure you probably contributed to, that had was looking every which way on the shot list, every which way, full on, backlit, whatever.
Yeah.
And you didn't know, and that's what you told me at the time, how you could possibly use just this big single source of lighting on the hillside. And what you would do if you were looking around and it was flat on over the top of the camera as full on, like a nightmare. And so what happened was that you couldn't, through the photography, work like that and protect the actors from being hit by the light full on and ruining the night mood, the mood that you'd created with your light. But on the day when you came to shoot, you persuaded the Coens to film the whole thing, or not the whole thing, but this major part of it in profile, so that you weren't forced round
that's not quite strictly true. I think you're combining two different scenes there. No, that big night scene, yes. The trick with
I'm talking about the one where you use the Muscos.
The Muscos. I can't remember if I had 2 or 3 now. I think it kept me to 2, but I can't remember. But yes, that was actually a lot about finding the right location. I don't think we had the location when we were talking.
Ah, right. No, you didn't describe it like the finished film.
No, it was a discussion of what they wanted to shoot that we had and how we would cover it, I think, that we'd have, but it was a general discussion about the scenes. And then we went looking for a location. And I said, I really need, it's in the script that Moss looks down in the daylight and sees these trucks down in the bowl below. So we were looking for a specific location
That gave you
visually,
that.
but then I needed also somewhere that I could put a light high that would allow me to shoot under it, so I could shoot 360. But the other thing about that was the main scene is happening just as the dawn started. So I can remember being with them, and then we were laying it out. There's a little mound in this valley, and the big escarpment was up there, and the light was going to go up there, and we were going to put the cars here because they could drive in this way. But the sun came up there, and I kept trying to get them to move the set so I could shoot the hero shot of the truck appearing up the little mound with the headlights on, with the real dawn coming up behind it. But I never quite got it all the way around. So I had to light the real dawn with some lamps just shooting in the air, which gave me actually a fake dawn, which was kind of funny because I think I had a 6-12 case. It wasn't 18s back then, was it? 6-12 case aiming just into the night sky and flagged off the little mound in front. But it was just literally light in the air because you backlighting all the particles in the air without smoke or anything. And I was getting, so that was all manipulating those angles. So that we didn't shoot. Yes, just the way it staged out, we didn't have to shoot directly with a highlight. I think there was one shot, but it was quite high. The light was quite high, so it wasn't very flat.
Because I thought there was a scene where you persuaded them to shoot from a certain angle that worked for the light.
Right. There was a scene when later in the movie when the 2 sheriffs come out of the cafe, and they're talking by the police car, and the shot in the film is then profiled, and it's against the back of the cafe, which had this little power down lights all around it, which we put in. And there was 2 things about that. I said to Joel, isn't this great angle? Do you mind playing it in silhouette?
Yeah.
And he said no, and it was good for production because there was a big storm coming through, and it was going to pour with rain any minute. And but Joel said, yeah, I don't mind, but you better mention to Tommy Lee Jones, he's in silhouette. So I was the one that had to go to Tommy. I said, look, we want to play this in a profile silhouette again. So do you mind if you play it like this to the sheriff you're talking to like that? He went, yeah. Like he did. We got on very well. But no, and I think he loves it in the end.
But that is that example, and the one I got slightly wrong about what it was, are examples of how operating it yourself can work for you as opposed to work against you, because then it's your, as long as you have the relationship and trust of the director, because there's a lot of directors who would turn around and say, oh, sorry mate, I need the cover, and I'd love to help you, but I need the coverage. I need to take the coverage back into the cutting room, you know, all that. Well, so you have to have a good, strong relationship, like for instance I have with Mike Lee, that sort of thing, where you can talk about these things, because sometimes you can't to directors. They've got this thing and they are fixated about it. Don't screw with my coverage.
But at the same time, there are directors who would prefer to have an operator because they want to sit beside the DP the whole time and have that person right next to them.
That's true.
So there is a reason for operators for certain ways of working.
Yes, that's very true.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I've not always. I mean, you often operate remotely, but when I'm operating off the dolly, it's more of a physically demanding job because you're not spending a lot of time getting off the dolly, going to talk to the director and getting back to the dolly again. So you keep quite fit, don't you? They can be a long way away in a tent.
A long way. A long walk.
Yeah, a long walk. But it's good.
I mean, when that bouncing blondes, you know, you've got to think about blondes. I mean, you really have got to think about blondes. Yeah. But I mean, they're a cheap lamp and open source, and they work dimmed down, and certainly work for you over a number of years, haven't they? Really well. You've used them over and over. I'm sure redheads too. Low tech, open face sorted. But the other thing that, I mean, I don't know where it started for you, but I remember you talking to me about where Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, in the burning cross in the Ku Klux Klan rally, and that great big cross over which you put a rig of, I think it was Dino's, and they were on dimmer.
They were
like
dimmed right down, flickering.
They were dimmed right down, and you had a firelight from the burning cross.
Right.
But and it was quite a big rig.
Right.
But it lit everything in the whole area, and you were able to utilize it.
But that, again, that was really about working with the directors, this case, John and Ethan, and looking at the location and saying, okay, so there's a burning cross here, and there's like, you know, a few hundred Klan members out here, and they're all supposed to be lit by the cross. What are we going to do? There's a tree there. Do you mind if that tree, the cross is here, the tree's there, and my lift is then behind the tree, arming up over the cross.
Hidden by the tree.
Yeah, it's hidden by the tree. So it's all, you know, it is, isn't it? It's a matter of saying, well, this is what you want, but this is how we can do it, and negate the need to paint something out, really, you know.
But do you think before that film that you had used Dino's like that?
Dino's.
Well, I think it was Dino's that you were using.
I don't know. I don't think it was Dino. Well, it might have been. I can't remember. It was quite a big old space, wasn't it? And it would have been dimmed down to like 25%, so they weren't giving much wherever they were.
Yeah, I think they were Dino's.
They might have been, yeah. Because
you went on to shoot other films, and you've been using that feel of Dino's and on with flicker boards, with the dimming down on a number of different films. It's obviously and it works very well because it looks stunning, it looks really great, but that is also, you could say, very low tech lighting.
Yeah,
it's
it
an
is,
open
you
face
know.
bulb like
Yeah.
a blondie.
Yeah, well, we did the same thing on 1917, the burning church. And it's interesting because we looked at all the LED equivalents, which there were some. I mean, we couldn't get enough lamps to do what we were wanting to do, but looking at the LEDs, it was interesting because they're never quite the same. I mean, one, you have to program them to go warmer when they dim, because they don't,
No, they don't.
Whereas a tungsten bulb, well, you dim it and you go to a certain color.
I mean,
You should explain that in 1917, it was just a big tower block of
Tower
lights.
block. It was the biggest.
Yeah, it was just a huge rig that later visual effects put the
Right.
church
But it's
into.
basically you're basically creating a flame, only it's a
Mhm.
burning
Yes.
cathedral, and it's huge, and it was like.
And you were looking straight at it.
Yes, we're looking straight at it,
Mhm.
but because it was a huge size, and all the bulbs were dimmed down, and they were all flood bulbs, I could look at it at any angle,
Yes.
and it wouldn't flare.
When
Because
you
it's
were
basically a big circle
right.
of
when
light.
you were looking at it, did you take the whole rig down in dimming wise?
No, it's way down
just-
anyway.
Oh, right.
Because there was no gel on it. So it's all dimmed down to
Mm.
15 or 20%.
So it didn't flare out on the
No, so it was dimmed down for the color, and it was just like, I mean, every now and
it was
again-
like a burning church, basically.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you would have some parts, depending on what the camera was doing, would have a hot spot. The lamps would be higher, or as the camera went round, you'd bring up part of it to light a certain part of the set, if it was a backlight or something, if it turned into a backlight, or we come around the corner and look down an alley, and something that would be on the back of the alley would be a bit hotter, so we bring up a certain part. But basically, it's a huge, big circle of lamps, and it was 6 tiers high. It's 50 foot high, because that's the highest they would allow us to do in a backlot of Shepperton.
Yeah.
You know,
50
because
foot
of the
high
planes
from the
going over.
ground up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A 50-foot high
I think it
tier
was
of
50 foot, yeah.
Dinos.
Dinos
12
and 18.
12
We
light
couldn't all
Dinos.
get Dinos, so it was 12 lights, 18 lights, 24.
But all
Dinos.
really to
But all par,
Mm.
Pars.
whatever they are.
right.
And you
amazing.
would have gone
Amazing.
higher if you could have.
I wanted to go another tier, but they wouldn't let me because of the planes.
Oh my God.
I
mean,
they
that-
found the lights.
I'm amazed they didn't kick off about the intensity
No,
of light, but then
Well, it
they're
never
all on
went up.
dimmers. Yeah,
It was never, I was shooting at 2.2.
yeah. So that decision to paint it out, is that something that everybody was happy with, adhered to, and
Well, we'd
took
done it on
board?
Skyfall, so Sam was
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
fine with it. We'd
Yeah.
done it on Skyfall,
For the
and I sort of
burning.
said the only way I
At the
could-
burning castle, at the burning
The
of
burning
Skyfall.
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
We did the real house burning on location, but on stage we did a big rig of Maxis or Dinos, and it was on stage and just dimmed down again, and we replaced it.
But you had also done it on Jarhead.
Yes,
Oh,
For
yeah,
the
on
burning
Jarhead,
oil.
yeah.
yes, no,
The
I remember
light
this.
on
I was going to say this because
Sorry. I
no,
didn't
no,
mean
not,
to-
don't please take the questions out of my mouth.
Oh, really?
On Jarhead, yes, they were supposed to be well,
The oil
Yeah,
rigs,
change.
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
the same gag, yeah.
yeah, and then replaced. And I mean, I
Yeah.
think the first time I heard that, I found it rather
That is the
gobsmacking.
worst. Well, first time I did that replacement, because we were really struggling. And originally production wanted to do all the night work on location, exterior. And I said, well, you're never going to control, I want atmosphere, and you'll never control it. So I suggested doing it on stage. And then we took 2 stages at Universal and, filled it with smoke, filled it with sand, dunes, painted a kind of landscape on the surround that looked like night was going off over the dunes. And then we had huge columns of 500 watt mushroom bulbs set in like rows, so the column was a 360-degree light, and they were like 14 or 16 feet high. And I heard it was Alan Davio had recently done a film where he had had his lights painted out and something else painted in. And I thought, well, why can't I do that? So that's what I suggested to production, and it was totally controllable. We didn't have to do night shooting, and they said, well, okay, it's a bus. money-wise. It's
Wow.
actually probably going to save us.
Yeah, when I first heard that,
Yeah.
I'd never really,
Yeah.
I've
All
never
we did
used
is
that.
we shot out in the desert. We shot a flame, which was like,
Yes.
you know, an oil
The
fire,
oil fire,
a real
yeah.
thing that was like 40
Yes.
feet high, and we shot that and different angles, and then stuck that in the in the other shot. So it was really quite a
So
simple.
is it an amalgam of out there in the real desert with a real,
We just shot the
oil
flames. It was
flame?
just the fire.
Oh, right.
We just took the flame element, nothing else.
oh, you shot that outside, you
Shot
mean,
that
just shot it like
outside.
a plate?
Yeah,
it,
a
and
plate
then
of
put
a
it-
flame.
An
Yeah,
hour,
right.
yeah.
in different sizes, and that
Yeah.
I literally just took the light out and put that in. And because the light was 360 and the thing that the stage was full of smoke, the light was blooming in the smoke, so it all looked quite natural.
Yeah.
And that there was a little bit of CG. They added some smoke going through the shot
Right.
to make it have a bit more dimension, because you know on stage you can't use black smoke, so they put
Right.
a bit in to give it a little bit more.
But that
sense of
enabled
horror.
all that close work to be done on a stage with
Yeah.
the control that you had.
Yeah, and
with the
basically we
actors
could
and-
shoot 360 degrees.
Yeah,
And you know, I was doing handheld, so
going round.
as I was going like this, that light would dim and that would come
Yes.
up or whatever. You know, we had it
Yeah.
all sort of trading off. So the shot.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic.
Yeah,
And that same gag, so to speak, you used on Skyfall as well.
yeah, that was the
For
same
at the
principle.
end,
Yeah,
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 when it was the main house that was
yeah,
burning.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
I can't remember where I started doing it, but probably when you said on Mountains of the Moon that time up
Yeah.
with the hut.
So these things are in your that you have refined them, made them much bigger, of course, grander, but they're the same principles of low tech lighting, which obviously works because it gives you the look
The first
that
time
you've
I
always
did it,
used rather than
yeah.
conventional.
I don't know. See, I haven't seen. I hadn't when I was starting out. I didn't see what anybody else did, and I forget what the film was. I think it was some. It might have been a pop promo. It might have been a short or something. But I wanted a soft gold light, and I went down to the Outward Bound store and got some space blankets, and they had gold space blankets, and I fitted that on a frame, and bounced the light off it. And then it was Biggles, or it was another gaffer I might have been working with earlier than that, where he gelled it. And then he said, well, if you dim it, and then we'll flicker it. And we used to flicker it with a flag in front of the light, didn't you? Or a gel in front of the lamp. You could put an orange gel in front and do that and get this flicker effect. So I used to play with all these different materials from the, you know, Outward Bound shop, you know, or going to haberdashery and getting different, you know, bits of material. And I got some sequin material back at home in Santa Monica that I'm dying to use. It's all little sequins. I'm sure that'd be it's a great look, but I haven't found the right place to use it yet.
Yeah, very
It's the
fascinating.
fun of
It's
it,
fascinating.
you know what I
It's
mean?
fascinating.
It's the fun of
It's
it.
fascinating. But it's your, I suppose it's your, in a way, what is most impressive about this. Now, not so much because it's a world of crazy LEDs and people are using goddamn everything. But back then, to step out and to go that other way, that ex-film school or almost ex-film student way, right? You know,
probably a bit of that.
bloody film students, fucking film students, what they think they are. To go that way, to go that route against the convention. I mean, you could say that it was, I'm not saying that you had a chip on your shoulder or even a brick from when you were ex-film school, but there was an industry issue about people who didn't come up the conventional way,
Yeah, but
as you well know.
yeah, there was. But on the other thing about it though was, I mean, Walter Lastley was a little bit unconventional, you know, the
He
cinema
sure was.
verity and all that. But I mean, but then the people that the cinematographers and filmmakers that I really started to admire when I was first thinking about film was, you know, people like Raoul Coutard,
Yes.
the French, and then
Me too.
and Keizo Miyagawa, who you know, was using mirrors a lot on Kurosawa's films and Michiguchi's films.
And Raokuta with bounce.
Yeah, you
bounce,
read all
bounce,
that,
soft,
and it's like it's
soft-
Raokuta using
yeah,
a 60
new
watt
colour.
bulb and a bit of
Oh.
silver wrap, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a lot of people were doing it.
Yeah.
Um,
And Chris Menges was doing it in
and
his
Chris, of course he was,
documentary
yeah,
days
yeah.
before he even hit films.
Right.
You mustn't
Chris
forget
was
that.
doing
And
that.
there were other great
you-
documentary people using China balls and all that stuff.
John Alonso, there was an American cinematographer magazine. It was probably in the BSC magazine as well. John Alonso, when he shot Chinatown, he'd been a documentary photographer, cinematographer, and he got Chinatown, and he had, for the first time, as he tells it, I'm sure it wasn't, but he said it was the first time he had a set on a big film, and he didn't know how to light it. So he lit it like he would a documentary. He put little batten strips of bulbs above the window, and then he put bounce light outside the window and stuff like that.
And
he
he
just
didn't know what he was
And they
doing.
didn't know what he was doing because he didn't use conventional lights. He made up all these
That's
little
what I'm
gags.
talking about.
Yeah, and so there
Yeah,
were,
what the
a lot
fuck
of
is
people-
going on here? Get rid of him.
but a lot of people were doing it, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And certainly before I was doing it. So, you know, it wasn't like it was new. I hadn't seen them do it, but, you know, it
I could put to you,
just made sense.
do you think they were doing it more in the States? Do you think that
No.
when you went over there and worked on Sid and Nancy and started to have this really strong relationship with crews, I remember you talking about them as the experience being very liberating.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that was actually different in the sense that when we were doing Sid and Nancy in New York, there was one particular electrician who was doing the practical work on set, and called Billy O'Leary. And I've worked with him ever since as a gaffer. In fact, the next film I got in America, I called him up and said, "Will you be gaffer on it?" And let's say he was a practical electrician. And the way he would rig practicals and the choices and stuff and the fun he had with it, that I just
And the
connected
gags
with
that
that.
you would think
The
of.
gags,
You
yeah.
would
And I really
connect
connected with it.
I'm right
So,
up your
yeah.
street, really.
So
isn't it?
I've worked with him for years and years.
Yeah.
Not that recently. A Blade Runner was the last one he was gaffer on. He was gaffer on Blade Runner 249. And we're still working in that way, you know, and yeah, I like that. So yeah, I suppose I was lucky, or I maybe I purposely looked for the people that were like Billy, that were kind of
Yes.
like, yeah, don't have to do that. Let's put up
Yes.
a 60 watt bulb or row of them, or
I just
we would shoot somebody at a table, and you would just put a little table lamp at a restaurant, and there it was, and we put a 60 watt bulb behind it, and
dim it down.
and dim it down. And there was a certain actress, I probably better not mention the name. She sat down, the camera was all set. She sat down and she looked at this 60 watt bulb dimmed down that was hidden behind the other practical on the table. She looked at it like that. And then the AD said, "Okay, turn over." And she forgot about it. But I could tell she said, "You're lighting me with a bare bulb."
Yeah, where's my diffusion?
You could tell there was like, but I thought it looked great, and I hope she did.
In the end.
In the end.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you did obviously have because I remember you being really, really enamored by the working over there. The working, I don't know, you found crews to be very film minded.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a tradition here of like cinema wasn't something that people from West London, from Pinewood and Shepherd and everything, you didn't really expect them to go and see a lot of movies. I mean, I know that some of them did, and I'm just talking about a general thing, really, that everybody would have seen your work. Everybody, well, there was an enthusiasm for film, an enthusiasm for cinema, as opposed to, standard industry practices I'm talking about again.
Back then, I would definitely agree with you. It's not like that now, but it was back then, definitely. I felt when I first when I was first in LA and I met a few of the great names of cinematography, they were incredibly welcoming.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember
you
being
saying,
Haskell Wexler and and Vilmos
Yes.
and Conrad.
And the clubhouse and all that.
Yeah,
And
I
it was
mean, they were really
inviting.
Yes,
Mhm.
but I mean, it was back then. When I left the film school, it was different here. You couldn't deny it.
No, it was.
Yeah,
It was. And I wondered whether that, in a way, led you to move over there and live over there and work over there. You know, and
Yeah,
put your
probably.
career that way. Because
probably, but I mean,
and I'm not talking against filmmaking
no.
in England at all. I'm
it
not
was
talking
a
about that.
particular time, wasn't it? I
Yes.
mean, I was getting opportunities then, you know.
I think it was getting married too, because
I was getting married made a bit of
well, no,
difference, didn't
after 1 year of marriage, he turned to me and went, I guess I don't live in England, which I didn't even know
But,
that he
you know,
thought he
yeah.
did.
But you know, when I yeah. I mean, I'd been fired off a movie as well, and then meeting up with Joel and Ethan, going to do a film in LA for the first time. I went there doing rock videos or whatever you call them, but to do a film in LA, all in LA. I mean, I'd shot there on Sid and Nancy, but to do a film Barton Fink in LA with them, that was a big shift. Really.
That was a studio film as well, really, wasn't it?
Kind
You were
of,
on the
was-
stages and
it
everything.
was full on, yeah.
Yeah.
We were at Culver stages, yeah.
That must
Yeah.
have cemented it.
That was a wonderful experience. And then straight after that, I did a film on the East Coast with David Mamet, and then it wasn't long after that we met up on a film.
Thunderheart after that.
So yeah, I mean, I was getting work there. I wasn't getting work back
Yeah.
here. That was a trouble. So it just was a natural segue, really. I mean, I never really intended to leave documentary. If you go back to that, I didn't. And it was just like I started getting offered, I was working with Mike, and Mike got some fiction work.
Yeah.
And I thought it felt like the right time. It felt like
Yeah.
the end of documentaries, as you and I kind of loved them. And
Yeah,
I
which
thought
was
that
on
the
film,
place
and
to
they
go.
became like video puddings.
Yeah, and they always had announcers. And
Which is what they did.
Yeah,
but
well,
not now, I'm
yeah.
sure.
they were all pre-structured.
Totally.
They would go somewhere like, to tell a story, but they'd already written the story.
Yeah, you couldn't actually,
couldn't
unbiased.
affect it.
It was unbiased
Right.
filmmaking where you had to show both sides of it. Any argument,
Yeah.
you couldn't make passionate
Right,
one-sided documentaries.
Right.
Was the death of it.
Yeah.
Was the death of it.
Mm.
And that's what happened, really.
Yeah.
They're boring, basically boring.
Yeah, well,
They weren't being done on film anymore.
Yeah.
That was it for me.
Yeah. So, things naturally take their own course, really. I mean, I didn't intend, I didn't intend to live in LA and be in LA. And I mean, of the two of us, I thought you were going to move to LA and I would move back to Devon, which I did.
Yeah.
After having a couple of bad experiences, I basically moved back to Devon
And gave
before I
up
went
the
to LA.
industry.
So that was the first time I gave up the industry. There's been a few, but we
Yeah,
won't go into
yeah.
that'd be too
Yeah.
embarrassing.
All right, I think we're coming towards the end.
Well,
of
that's
the
a good
time.
place
Yeah,
to
right.
end it. Yeah, we don't want
right.
to go into
I
it.
never
Yeah.
did, because I met Mike.
Yeah.
I would have
yeah.
done if
Really?
I hadn't met Mike.
Really?
I think so, yeah. Because I wouldn't have worked with him if I'd lived
Yeah.
in the States.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah.
And there we go. So I didn't, because of my relationship with him.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
happy about that.
Yeah.
Very happy.
Yeah.
But that's why I didn't go. I still dream about it. Like that girl naked on,
Yeah.
on your photograph.
Poster,
On your photograph, lying on the boardwalk with the sun streaming
Yeah,
down.
there's always somewhere there.
I remember LA. God, take me back there at the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but nobody makes films in LA anymore. Well, I mean, some do, but very few.
Okay.
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 All right. Well,
Right.
yes. Well, great.
Right.
I mean, I've got another 50 pages there,
I'm-
but
Well,
I
that'll be
can't
part two.
find them.
Yeah, that'll be part two. We'll do part two. But before we go, I wanted to read out the names of the two people who have each won a book of BYWAYS, thanks to Damiani. It's Gwyn Hemmings and Andrew Leo. So thanks for being with us and sticking through this conversation.
I don't think there's anybody left out there.
They're all gone to bed. Right.
I can't see anybody.
Oh.
I can't see anybody at all.
Thank you.
Okay.